Get out. Get out. Leave my house.
Marcus, it's raining. Our son is 5 months old.
I said get out, Julie! Take your things. Take him.
You're doing this now? Tonight?
I've made up my mind.
Tonight?
Rain hammered the windshield of the taxi as Julie Adeyemi pressed her son tighter against her chest, his small body wrapped in a blanket that was already damp at the edges. Behind her, the porch light of the house she'd called home for 6 years flickered once, then went dark, as if even the house had decided it was done with her too. She didn't look back. She couldn't. 3 suitcases sat crammed in the trunk, packed in 11 furious minutes by hands that shook the entire time. Somewhere in one of them was a photo album Marcus hadn't let her take the first time, 2 years ago, when things had started to unravel. She'd grabbed it anyway this time, some kind of small rebellion. "Ma'am? Where to?" Julie opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Where did you go at 11 at night with an infant and 3 suitcases and no plan?" "My sister's," she finally said. "I'll give you the address." 6 years earlier, Julie had been the kind of beautiful that made rooms go quiet. Not because she demanded attention, she never had, but because she carried herself like someone who'd never once doubted she belonged wherever she stood. Marcus used to tell people that story, how he saw her at his cousin's wedding, in a green dress, laughing at something no one else had heard, and he'd walked straight across the room without a plan, without a line, just certainty. "I knew," he used to say, arm around her waist, proud like he'd discovered something rare. "I just knew." She believed him. For years, she had every reason to. Marcus Adeyemi wasn't a bad man, not back then, not in any way Julie could have predicted. He was ambitious, yes, sometimes to a fault, the kind of man who talked about 5-year plans on second dates. He ran a modest personal training studio out of a strip mall when they met, 6 treadmills and a dream, and Julie had believed in that dream before the bank did. She'd worked reception for him for free the first year, just to keep the lights on. She'd believed in him, and he had loved her, really loved her, in the way that made her feel like the center of something. He noticed when she changed her hair. He remembered how she took her coffee before she'd finished the sentence. When she got pregnant, he cried in the ultrasound room, actual tears, and told the technician, "That's my wife, that's my son," to anyone who'd listen. Julie held on to that memory now, in the back of a taxi, the way you hold on to a photograph of someone who has died. Because in a very real way, that Marcus had. The pregnancy had been hard. Preeclampsia in the 3rd trimester, an emergency C-section, 6 weeks of recovery that turned into 6 months because her body simply wouldn't cooperate the way it once had. Her stomach, flat and taut for the 28 years before, softened, stretched, and stayed that way no matter what she did. Her hips widened. There was a permanent stripe along her lower abdomen where the surgeon had cut, silver now, healed but visible. She'd expected some adjustment. What she got was silence. Marcus stopped touching her the way he used to. Not cruelly, not at first, just less. His hand didn't find the small of her back anymore. He stopped calling her beautiful, in that easy, unthinking way, and started saying, "You look tired," instead, which was somehow worse, because it sounded like concern and felt like a verdict. 3 months postpartum, at his mother's 60th birthday party, he'd introduced her to a business associate with the words, "This is my wife, Julie. She's still getting her body back, aren't you, babe?" He'd laughed when he said it. Light, easy, like a joke among friends. Julie had laughed too. What else was there to do, surrounded by 40 of his relatives, holding their 4-month-old son on her hip? But she remembered the way the associate's smile had faltered, just slightly, before he covered it. She remembered driving home in silence. She remembered locking herself in the bathroom later that night and staring at her stomach in the mirror for 11 minutes. She counted, somehow, the way you count things when you're trying not to feel them, before Marcus knocked on the door and asked if she was almost done because he needed to shower. That was the first time. It was not the last. It got worse in ways that were slow enough to explain away, and that was the cruelest part. A comment here, a joke there. You used to fit in that dress. Maybe try the gym again. It helped last time. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. He started working later. He started going to the studio, which had grown by then into something bigger, a proper facility with 3 locations, on weekends too, for the business. And Julie, exhausted from nights of feeding and days of a baby who didn't sleep, didn't have the strength to ask what was really keeping him there. At a dinner with his college friends, 8 months postpartum, one of them made an offhand comment about snapback moms on Instagram, women who looked runway ready 6 weeks after delivery, and Marcus had laughed and said, gesturing loosely toward Julie without quite looking at her, "Yeah, well, some of us are still waiting." The table had gone quiet. Someone changed the subject. Julie excused herself to check on the baby monitor, though the baby was at home with the sitter and there was no monitor to check. She sat in the restaurant bathroom and pressed her palms against her eyes until the sting passed. She started avoiding mirrors. She started declining invitations. She started, and this was the part she was most ashamed of, later, the part she could barely say out loud even to her sister, believing him, believing that whatever this new, softer, changed body was, it made her less desirable, less worthy, less her, somehow, though she still woke up every morning as herself, still loved her son with the same ferocity, still laughed at the same things. The compliments Marcus gave other women, colleagues, clients at the studio, women he followed on social media whose comment sections he liked, without thinking anyone would notice, became a kind of quiet torture. He never called it cheating. He never touched anyone, as far as she knew, but he made sure she saw. A phone left open, a comment liked and unliked in the same breath, like he'd caught himself, but not before she'd seen it. Julie's mother had warned her, once gently, over the phone, that man loved the shape of you more than the soul of you, and one day, that's going to show. Julie hadn't wanted to believe it, but her mother had been right. The night it ended started ordinarily enough. Julie was in the nursery, feeding their son, Daniel, 5 months old now, with Marcus's serious eyes and her stubborn chin, when she heard the front door, heard voices, heard, unmistakably, a woman's laugh, drifting up the stairs, easy and unbothered, like she'd been in the house before. By the time Julie came down, holding Daniel against her shoulder, Marcus was standing in the living room with a woman Julie had never seen. Tall, slim, dressed like she'd stepped out of one of the studio's promotional photos, because, Julie would later learn, she had. Amara, 26, Marcus's new head trainer, hired 4 months ago. In his life a lot longer than that, Julie would come to understand, though not tonight, not yet. Julie, Marcus didn't look surprised to see her. He looked ready, like he'd been rehearsing this. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" "This is Amara. She's going to be helping me with something, and I think it's time you and I had an honest conversation." Julie remembered afterward that she'd laughed, a short, disbelieving sound, because the absurdity of it hadn't landed yet. A strange woman in her living room at 9 at night, and her husband calling for honesty, like it was a virtue he'd suddenly discovered. "Marcus, our son is right here." "I know." He said it like it settled something. "I think it's better if you two go stay somewhere else for a bit. Just until we figure things out." "Figure what out?" "This is my house. It's my name on the deed, Julie." The words landed like a slap, precise and deliberate, and something in his face told her he'd chosen them exactly for that reason. What followed was the kind of argument that doesn't stay contained to one room. Raised voices, a slammed door, Daniel startling awake and crying, Amara standing awkwardly by the window, pretending to check her phone. Julie said things she meant and things she didn't. Marcus said things that would replay in her mind for months afterward, each one a small surgical cut. You let yourself go. I built an empire on the idea that women shouldn't accept this, and you're sitting here asking me to accept it in my own house. An empire, Julie repeated, hollow. Is that what this is? Is that what your whole company is? Get out, he said again, and this time his voice didn't shake at all. Take your things. Take him. She stood there for one long moment, Daniel wailing against her shoulder, and looked at the man she had believed in before the bank did, before his mother did, before anyone, and understood, with a clarity that felt almost peaceful in its cruelty, that he was not going to change his mind. That whatever version of him had cried in that ultrasound room 6 years ago no longer existed, or had never existed the way she remembered, or, worse, had existed and simply decided she wasn't worth keeping around for. She packed in 11 minutes. She did not cry until she was in the taxi, and even then, she made almost no sound, because she didn't want to frighten Daniel any more than the night already had. The rain kept falling. The house kept receding in the rearview mirror, and somewhere behind her, in a life that used to be hers, a light came on in the window of what had been her bedroom and stayed on. Julie's sister, Ngozi, didn't ask questions when she opened the door at midnight to find Julie soaked, shaking, and holding a screaming infant. She just stepped back, let them in, and put the kettle on. That was Ngozi's way. Action before explanation, always had been, since they were girls, sharing a room in Enugu, and their mother worked nights. It took 3 days before Julie could say the whole story out loud, without her voice breaking somewhere in the middle. He said it was better this way, Julie said, staring into a mug of tea gone cold. Better for whom, Ngozi? Better for him. You're not going back there. I don't have a choice. My name's not on anything. The house, the accounts, everything's his. Then we find you a lawyer who doesn't care whose name is on what. Ngozi said it with the flat certainty of someone who had already started making calls, and within a week, she had. A family lawyer named Patricia Osei, sharp-eyed and unhurried, who listened to Julie's account without once looking surprised, which told Julie more than anything else that this was not a rare story, that there were other Julies, that somewhere, a filing cabinet in this woman's office was full of them. Postpartum abandonment cases are more common than people think, Patricia said, sliding a legal pad across the desk. And harder to win than they should be, if your husband has good lawyers and a public image to protect. Does he? Julie thought of the studio, of the 3 locations that had, in the last year, become 5. Of the investors Marcus had started courting, the interviews he'd done for local business magazines, the Instagram page with the tagline, Rebuild, Reclaim, Rise, under a photo of him flexing beside a row of gleaming equipment. He has a very good image to protect, Julie said quietly. That might be the only leverage I have. 2 weeks after the taxi ride, Marcus's lawyer sent a letter, not to discuss custody, not to discuss the house, but to offer Julie a settlement, a modest one, enough to rent a small apartment, cover Daniel's expenses for perhaps 18 months, on the condition that she sign an NDA regarding the circumstances of the separation, and make no public statements about Marcus Adeyemi or Adeyemi Fitness Group. Julie read it twice. Then she understood. He wasn't afraid of losing her. He was afraid of being seen. He's building something, Patricia said, when Julie brought her the letter. Something big enough that a messy story about a postpartum wife thrown out in the rain would be a problem. That tells us 2 things. 1, he has more to lose than he's letting on. 2, we may have more power here than it feels like right now. For the first time since the taxi ride, something other than grief moved through Julie's chest. It felt, distantly, like the beginning of anger, the useful kind, the kind that gets things done, rather than the kind that only hurts. She did not sign the NDA. What Julie didn't know, what she wouldn't learn in full for another 6 weeks, was that Amara had not, in fact, been in Marcus's life for 4 months. She'd been in his life for closer to 2 years, longer than Daniel had been alive, longer even than the worst of the comments and the slow, cold withdrawal had been going on. The affair itself wasn't the secret that would matter most. Marcus wasn't a careful man in matters of the heart, and half the staff at his flagship location already suspected something between him and his head trainer. The real secret was smaller, and it lived inside a folder on Marcus's laptop labeled, with a carelessness that would later strike Julie as almost funny, Q3 Projections, Confidential. Adeyemi Fitness Group was not, as its investors believed, a thriving 5-location empire on the verge of a $50 million expansion. It was 2 locations profitable, 1 barely breaking even, and 2 bleeding money every month, kept afloat by loans Marcus had taken out against the house, Julie's house, the one whose deed he'd thrown in her face. He'd used it as collateral 8 months ago, before Daniel was even born, without telling her, forging what he needed to forge along the way, banking on the fact that a woman drowning in postpartum exhaustion and a husband's slow cruelty wouldn't have the energy left to read the fine print on documents she signed half asleep at the kitchen table. Julie discovered this by accident, going through a box of old files Ngozi had helped her retrieve from a storage unit, documents from before the separation, things she was entitled to under the settlement negotiations. She found a loan statement she didn't recognize, a second mortgage, her signature on it, in handwriting that was almost hers but not quite, a little too smooth, a little too confident for a woman who'd been running on 4 hours of sleep. She hadn't signed it. "He forged your signature," Patricia said, turning the document over in her hands with the stillness of a woman recalculating an entire case in real time. "Julie, this isn't a divorce settlement anymore. This is fraud." The confrontation, when it came, happened not in a courtroom, but in the parking lot of the flagship studio, 3 weeks before the grand opening of what Marcus had started calling, in every press release, the $50 billion vision, a wild, inflated number he'd been feeding to local journalists who printed it without checking, because a good story sells better than an accurate one. Julie hadn't planned to go there. She'd gone to drop off paperwork with Patricia, whose office was 2 doors down, and Marcus had seen her from the studio's floor-to-ceiling windows and come outside before she could leave. He looked good. That was the strange, small cruelty of it. He looked healthier than she'd seen him in years. Tanned, lean, dressed in branded athletic wear that probably cost more than her rent. Amara stood a few feet behind him, watching, arms crossed. "You're making this ugly," Marcus said, without greeting. "The forgery claim. My lawyer says you're trying to blow this up into something it isn't. You put a second mortgage on our house, Marcus. Without me, with my name on it. I was protecting our future. There is no our anymore. You made sure of that." He looked past her, toward the studio. The banners already hung for the opening. Adeyemi Fitness. Rebuild. Reclaim. Rise. Snapping faintly in the wind. "Do you have any idea what I built here? What this means? Not just for me. For women, Julie. Women who felt exactly like you did. Ashamed. Invisible. I built a place where they don't have to feel that anymore." Julie stared at him, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel the old ache of wanting him to see her. She felt something closer to pity. "You built a 50,000 square foot monument to the thing you couldn't forgive me for," she said quietly. "And you financed it by stealing from the one woman who believed in you before any of this existed." Something flickered across his face. Not quite guilt, but close enough to it that Julie knew, with sudden certainty, that some part of him understood exactly what he'd done. "I'll fix it," he said, quieter now, almost to himself. "After the opening, I'll fix the loan, It's not yours to fix quietly anymore, Marcus." Behind him, Amara had gone very still, watching him with an expression Julie recognized instantly, because she'd worn it herself once. The particular stillness of a woman beginning to suspect she doesn't know the man in front of her nearly as well as she thought. "What loan?" Amara said. Marcus didn't answer. That night, alone in Gozie's guest room, with Daniel finally asleep beside her, Julie opened her laptop and typed a message to Patricia. "I want to go forward with the fraud claim. All of it. Publicly, if it comes to that." She hovered over the send button for a long moment, thinking of the version of herself who had once believed a green dress and a stranger's certainty were the beginning of a love story. That woman felt very far away now, not gone exactly, but changed the way a coastline changes after a storm. Still recognizable. Reshaped. She hit send. 3 days later, an email arrived from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line blank. She almost deleted it as spam. Instead, she opened it and read a single line that made her sit up straight, heart pounding. "I have documents you need to see. About the loans, about the investors, about what really happened 5 months before you gave birth." Julie read it twice, then a third time, understanding slowly dawning that the name signed at the bottom wasn't a stranger's initial at all. It was Amara's. Julie stared at the email for a long time before she replied. Not because she doubted it, some instinct told her it was real, but because a small, tired part of her wanted, just for one evening, to not have to be brave again. She replied anyway. When and where? They met 4 days later at a coffee shop on the far side of the city, somewhere neither of them was likely to be recognized. Amara arrived first. No makeup, hair pulled back, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd stood in Julie's living room 5 months earlier. She looked, Julie thought, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "I need you to know I didn't come here to apologize," Amara said, before Julie had even sat down. "I'm not going to pretend what I did to your family was nothing. It wasn't, but I found out 3 weeks ago that Marcus has been lying to me too, and I'm done protecting a man who only tells the truth when it's convenient for him." She slid a flash drive across the table. "What's on it?" Julie asked. "Everything. The real financials. Emails between him and 2 investors, where he inflates the company's valuation, the 50 billion number. It's not even close, Julie. It's not even 50 million. It's barely 8. Loan documents. And a message thread from 14 months ago, where he talks about needing the house equity before the baby came, because the studio was already struggling and he didn't want investors to know." Julie's hands had gone very still around her coffee cup. 14 months. Before Daniel was even... "He knew the business was in trouble before you gave birth," Amara said, and for the first time her composure cracked slightly. "Everything he said to you, about your body, about the gym being some kind of mission to help women. I believed some of that too, in the beginning. I thought I was different, that he loved me for real reasons, but I found messages, Julie. He talks about clients. Women who come in ashamed of their post-baby bodies, exactly like you, as conversion metrics, testimonials, before and afters, marketing material. He built a business by making women feel small and then selling them the cure. I was part of the sales pitch. So was his humiliation of you, whether he understood that or not. Investors loved the story. Devoted husband, fitness empire, mission-driven founder. A wife who let herself go didn't fit the brand." The words landed in Julie with a strange, cold clarity. Not as new information exactly, but as the final piece that made an old, blurry picture suddenly sharp. She'd spent 5 months believing Marcus's cruelty had been personal, born of some private disappointment in her body. And it had been that, partly, but it had also been useful to him. Her shame had been raw material. "Why are you giving me this?" Julie asked quietly. Amara looked down at her hands. "Because 2 nights ago, he told me I needed to tighten up before the opening gala." "Same words, Julie. Almost exactly the same words your sister told me he used on you." Her voice wavered, just once. "I understood, finally, that it was never about your body. It was never going to be about mine either. It's just what he does to feel like he's in control of something." The grand opening of the flagship studio took place on a bright Saturday morning, 3 weeks later. banners snapping in the wind, a small stage set up for Marcus's speech, local news cameras angled toward the entrance. Julie was not there. She had no interest in giving him an audience. But Patricia was, seated quietly near the back with a folder in her lap and a journalist from the city's business desk beside her. Someone Patricia had spent the last 2 weeks feeding a very different story than the one Marcus intended to tell. Julie watched it unfold later, in pieces, the way most people experience scandal now. A video clip shared online, a headline, a follow-up article. Marcus, mid-speech, talking about vision and transformation and rebuilding what the world tells women they should be ashamed of, before a reporter's question about irregularities in his reported valuation cut through the applause like a wire pulled taut. The uncomfortable pause, the forced smile, the way his eyes found Amara in the crowd. Amara, who did not smile back. It didn't end that day. It ended slowly, the way these things do. An investigation, an emergency investor meeting, a quiet and humiliating restructuring that stripped Marcus of control over the company he'd built his entire identity around. The forgery claim moved forward separately, methodically, Patricia's calm competence never wavering. Marcus's lawyers tried, for a while, to make it disappear. It didn't. Some truths, once spoken aloud by more than one person, are very hard to put back in a drawer. Julie was not there for any of the worst of it, and she found, to her quiet surprise, that she didn't want to be. She had spent 5 months learning that her value had never been tied to the size of her waist, and she wasn't interested in spending the next 5 watching a man she used to love finally reckon with the size of his own dishonesty. That reckoning belonged to him. Her life belonged to her. 6 months after the night in the rain, Julie stood in the small kitchen of her own apartment, hers, on a lease with her name on it and no one else's, watching Daniel pull himself up along the edge of the couch, wobbling, delighted with himself, nearly 11 months old now, and utterly unaware of everything his mother had survived to give him this ordinary, sunlit Tuesday morning. The settlement had come through the week before, not the number Marcus's lawyers had first offered, nowhere close. Enough, instead, for a fresh start that didn't require gratitude to anyone. The forgery case would take longer to fully resolve, but Patricia was confident, and Julie had learned, slowly, to trust confidence that was earned rather than performed. She still thought about the woman in the green dress sometimes, not with grief anymore, with something closer to tenderness, the way you might think of an old friend who taught you something important before moving on. That woman hadn't known yet that her worth was never something someone else got to determine. It had taken a rainy night, a forged signature, and a stranger's daughter to teach her that. But she knew it now, and she was not planning to forget it again. Her phone buzzed. A message from Gozi. "Sunday dinner. Bring my nephew. I miss his face." Julie smiled, typed back a yes, and looked over at Daniel, who had let go of the couch entirely and was standing, for one triumphant wobbling second, on his own. "Look at you," she said softly, crossing the room to catch him before he fell. "Look at what you can do." A note for the men watching this. If a woman's body changes after she gives you a child, after she has carried life, torn tissue, sacrificed sleep and shape and comfort to bring your son or daughter into the world, that change is not a flaw to be corrected. It is evidence of what she survived for you. A woman who feels safe enough to change in front of you, to trust you with her most vulnerable body, deserves patience, not punishment. She deserves a partner who understands that stretch marks and softness are not the opposite of beauty. They're the aftermath of love, made real. If you find yourself ashamed of the mother of your children, ask yourself honestly what you're really ashamed of. More often than not, it isn't her body. It's your own fear of loving someone whose worth you can't fully control. Build her up before the world ever gets the chance to tear her down. That is what love after children actually looks like. Not applause for the body that used to be, but devotion to the person who is still, entirely, here.